Hello everyone and welcome to a virtual session of our Fusion Day poster workshop. My name is Cassandra Beard and I will be helping you along the process and giving you a little bit of information about how to create an academic poster as well as what you can expect for Fusion Day. First, we're going to dive into the different programs that you could use to create your academic poster. PowerPoint is probably the most user-friendly and most popular. We will be going through a step-by-step process on how to create PowerPoint throughout this presentation, and we also have pre-made templates available on the Fusion Day website that you can use. If you're more comfortable with it, you could use the Adobe Suite, either InDesign or Photoshop. There's a lot of text, so probably not Photoshop, but there are Adobe products in the computer labs in Springfield Hall if you're more comfortable with that. Last would be the website Canva. It's pretty user-friendly and pretty similar to PowerPoint. I did find some nice templates on there for free, but some of the other more elegant or fancy ones do require a small subscription fee. So first we're going to talk about the content and how to lay out your poster. So similar to if you're writing a research paper, you're going to break this down into 4 to 6 parts and very briefly summarize the information within each of those categories. So the specific phrases or wording terminology that I use for this may depend on your major. The first will be the introduction, and this is when you describe what you did. Share what problem that you were trying to solve initially before you started the research. And if you want to, you can provide a little bit of background and context just to give your audience a better idea of what you were doing and where you were coming from. Next is the process. So this is going to be where you describe how you conducted your research. You can talk about your methodology, different materials that you used, how you conducted your research. This is also where you can provide your hypothesis or your objective statement. I've also seen where the objective statement or the hypothesis is its own section, either underneath the introduction and before the process, or you can also put it underneath the process. The next is a list of goals that you had for this project, and maybe sharing some lessons that you had learned from your research. Next is going to be discussing your results. This is where you're going to explain the impact of your work and what it has on the world or your community, whatever you're looking at. Really explaining your analysis of the data, the findings, or even if you're providing sample work. This is a good place to provide visual aids with either charts or graphs, or if you have a pretty wordy, lengthy explanation of your research, you could break this up into bullet points or even using pictographs and visually breaking things up just to make it a little more interesting for your audience to look at. Last would be your conclusion, and this is where you're going to reflect upon the work that you conducted. Similar to your introduction, you're going to want to keep it very brief, summarize and wrap things up within 1 or 2 sentences. This is also where you can share what's next in your research. What are your future plans now that you have found this data and solved this problem? What's next? It's also not required, but if you would like, you can include a small works cited section on your posters. And it would also be nice to have an acknowledgement section as well. If you've been working with a faculty member or maybe a non-for-profit group around town, if somebody helped fund your research, this would be a nice way to acknowledge that and thank them within your poster. Next, we are going to explain how to actually set up the document and create your poster. So as I stated earlier, we do have templates available on the Fusion Day website that you can just cut and paste the information that's on there with what information that you have. I also have a step-by-step process of if you decide that you want to create from scratch your own poster, which is completely fine. And I have that list right here, but we're going to go on to the next slide where I have a video to show you exactly where everything is. So you're going to go at the top and click the Design tab, click Slide Size, and go to Custom Slide Size. And and everything is going to be horizontal. So you'll need to make it 36 by 48 and make sure that you click the landscape on both sides. Then you'll hit OK, hit ensure fit, and you should be good to go. PowerPoint will have these pre-made boxes, so you can just cut those and then you'll have a blank canvas to start from. When it comes to your layout, just a few things to keep in mind. Present your information the way that you normally read, left to right, top to bottom, and break your information up into 3 or 4 columns, and make sure that you have line breaks to divide the poster into sections, so that introduction, results, conclusion. Make sure there's enough spacing so everything's not cluttered on the poster board. As I stated earlier, if you can use bullets instead of long paragraphs to summarize your information, this will just keep your audience more engaged. And then please do not use gradient effects for your background. It just generally doesn't come out well whenever you are printing in such a large scale. I also have a hyperlink on the next bullet point to Jury's marketing website, where you can download logos, and there's some branding guidelines if you really want to follow the specific colors and font that Jury uses. And please don't forget to spell check your poster before submitting it for print. So let's talk about fonts. The size and type of font should be legible from 3 to 4 feet away. So you're going to be in a room with several other students, possibly 100, and you're going to want your poster to stand out. So once somebody walks into that room, you're going to want your poster to be so eye-catching and so legible from across the room that they then come up to you and ask you questions about it. So I have some suggested fonts along the left-hand side. The bottom one is actually Jury's branding font if you want to use that. And then on the right-hand side, the sizes, make sure your title is between 72 and 82 points. Headings and section titles, 36 to 44. The body of your text, 24 to 32. And captions, if you use a graph or you use any images that you've gotten off the internet, you will need a caption for that. And your graphs will need at least a sentence or 2 explanation, just kind of describing what information you're presenting to the audience. And please only use 1 to 2 fonts and just create that consistency. So if you want to use more than one font, I would suggest using your title and your headings as one, and then the body and caption, you could use your second font. So since you are visually representing your work, you are going to want to have some images on your poster board and not just huge blocks of text. You want to make sure there's a nice balance between text and images. Use graphs, as I stated earlier, to summarize your data and any information that you can have. You want to make sure that if you use graphs, you don't skew the information to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So what I mean by that is if you have your information on one side going from 5, 10, 15, 20, you don't want to immediately jump from 20 to 50 just so you have that dramatic effect in a line graph. Next, it's a good idea just using between 2 or 3 images. Depending on the spacing and layout of your poster, you can get away with more. And then you want to make sure that you have high resolution images. 150 dpi or higher will be required for printing these posters on a large scale. And I do have some videos on how to make sure that the images that you have, to check the DPI, and if they are lower, how to raise it to the 150. There's also an example on here on the very first and the bottom just some different ways that you could break up your information. So if you don't want to have just a bunch of bullet points in every section, if you have a step-by-step process, you could visually break it up in something like that. So when it comes to your images, you want to insert them directly into PowerPoint. You're not going to want to copy and paste from the internet, and you're not going to want to enlarge your images in PowerPoint because this will most likely result in pixelation, which you don't want whenever it comes to printing. So making any adjustments to your images before you bring them into PowerPoint is going to be crucial. You can go smaller, but if you're going to enlarge, make sure that you increase the size of your images outside of PowerPoint, and then, like I said, insert directly onto your slide. Now, after all of that, with charts or graphs, you can copy and paste from Excel directly into PowerPoint. I think just because they're both Microsoft programs, they do pretty well at talking to each other. And like I said, make sure your graphs are accurate and you don't skew the information to make it more visually appealing. All images should be cited. Charts and graphs should also have a 1 to 2 sentence caption to explain the data represented as well. So now let's talk a little bit about how to make sure you have those high resolution images. Like I said, all images need to be at least 150 dpi. So I'm going to show you a quick video on how to do that in Windows as well as how to do it on a Mac. So for a Mac, you are going to find your image from the internet and save it in the appropriate folder, giving it a name. You will need to use an outside web source whenever converting your DPI on Windows. So you're going to open up your image, right click it, and scroll all the way down and click Properties. This will give you all of the information that you need about your image after clicking Details, and you can see it's only 96 DPI, so we need to bump that up a little bit. Next, you're going to go to Convert Town. It's pretty easy to use. Click 150, choose your image, upload that, and it automatically saves your new high resolution image to your computer. Converting the DPI on a Mac is slightly easier than on a Windows because you can do it directly on your computer and you don't have to go to an outside web source. Once you have downloaded your image, you will want to click on it to open it. Then you will go up to Tools, Adjust Size, look for the resolution, that's the same as DPI, change it to 150. Hit OK, and it will resize your image and automatically save it. So the following slides are just some examples to kind of help you out, inspire you, give you some ideas of different ways that you can set up your poster and present your information. There are a bunch of these already printed out in Springfield Hall in some classrooms and in the hallway, so feel free to walk over there and take a look if you just have a little bit of anxiety on how to set your poster up. So this one has a nice balance of text and images. There's nice spacing between each column. You can clearly tell where the headers are, and they also break their information up into charts and graphs. This one is nice. There's a nice contrast between the dark background and the lighter colors that they use for their text. It's also a nice way, rather than just the 3 to 4 vertical columns, how you can set this up horizontally. And using those images to represent your information, as well as break up those bodies of text when those arrows along the top. It's pretty visually appealing. So this one again is easy to follow. You can clearly see where the headers are. It has nice spacing. I would normally say this has quite a bit of text, but given the topic being quantum factorization, I would assume that it needs a little bit more of an explanation than some possible other things. This one again is just a nice way to lay out the document outside of those traditional 3 or 4 vertical columns. So they even have one of the columns broken up into 2 separate sections side by side. This one is nice. It does use that gradient background, which is going to look different from computer screen to printing, so please do not do that. It does have quite a few images, but I think the way that they've balanced it and laid it out with those clear lines between those columns, it helps out a lot. This one again has a nice balance of pictures, charts, along with their text. This one does a really good job at summarizing their information, providing all of their data in a variety of different ways. They do have 5 columns and the font gets pretty small in there, so you have to be pretty close up to it in order to read that. So I would suggest keeping with those 3 or 4 columns so you can have that larger font size. This one, the headings are very legible, they're blue, they stand out from everything else. But they do have a lot of images and the whole thing overall just feels a little bit cluttered. So as I stated, these are the templates that you can find online. Feel free to download and customize as you feel. You can change it to having color, and then the information that's there you can just highlight, cut it, and paste in with your information. I would also type up everything that you are wanting to put on your poster in a Word document and directly copy and paste your text into PowerPoint, because it's not always the greatest at catching grammatical errors like Word usually is. So let's talk about saving your PowerPoint. Whenever you go to turn these in, they will be turned in online on the Fusion Day website, and they will need to be saved as a PDF document. So I have step-by-step instructions here again. And here's a video on how to do that. So you'll click File, Export, and then Create PDF. Make sure everything's clicked, the standard publishing for print. Click Publish. And you now have a PDF that you can submit for printing. Now we're going to kind of switch gears and talk about actually presenting your work and just what you can expect the day of Fusion Day. So similar to designing your poster, you're going to want to keep your talking points pretty brief and summarize. I would suggest getting some note cards, using bullet points, separating your information and making it clear, pretty large and legible so you can quickly look down at your notes whenever you are speaking with the audience about your projects. And I would practice in front of roommates, friends, family members, just really nail down what you want to say. It's also a good idea to show your poster to a lot of people. Many of the people coming to this aren't going to necessarily be in your field of study, so they may not understand everything that you conduct in your research or your process about it. So show a lot of different people outside of your department and see if the information makes sense to them. And also, along with that, assume that your audience has pretty limited information about your field. So if you use kind of industry lingo or jargon, just explain that a little bit and make sure that everyone from all backgrounds are going to be able to understand the research that you conducted. So just a little bit about what you can expect on Fusion Day and how to prepare for that. In the morning, there will be certificate capstone panel sessions. So each certificate will have a small group of students that represents it, and each certificate will have about 10 minutes to present to their panel. So each student that's involved in this should be prepared with a brief 1 to 2 minute description about your project. The next, and there will be more students involved in this, are the major capstone presentations. So this is going to be where students will show up to the O'Reilly Center, find their poster, which will be printed and hung up for them prior to this event. So you'll just need to walk in and find your poster, and then you'll need to be prepared to speak about your research and the content on that. So guests will be coming and going and casually walking around looking at all the posters. So this is going to require you to kind of have some crowd control. You might be explaining and almost to the very end of your presentation when somebody walks up and starts listening. So you might need to kind of engage them as well, and just a little bit of management on your end whenever it comes to presenting your research. I've also included the Fusion Day schedule that can also be found on the website, but it'll actually start Wednesday, April 27th with graduate project posters, and then there will be an alumni speaker at 7 p.m. Thursday, like I said, will start at 9 a.m. for the certificate capstone presentations, and that'll go from 9 to 9:50, and then another one from 10 to 10:50. Next will be those major capstone presentations in the O'Reilly Event Center from 11:30 to 1. And also from 11 to 1:30 there will be food trucks all along Drury Lane for everyone to enjoy. And then for the rest of your day between 1 and 2 p.m. Honors and Fusion Grant presentations will happen at Plaster Gallery, and then there'll be a couple sessions for the Fuse Talks. These are going to be kind of TED Talk styles, about 7 minutes of presentation, and you can also apply to those as well in the same area that you will submit your posters. Last, they will end everything with our keynote speaker at 7 p.m. So just a few things to keep in mind. The deadline for submitting posters for printing is April 15th, and that hyperlink right there will send you directly to where you need to go to submit those. All posters must be 36 by 48 inches and horizontal orientation. Images should be at least 150 dpi. They can be higher. Posters must be submitted as a PDF. We will not accept it if they are submitted as a PowerPoint. And then just keep in mind that Fusion Day starts April 27th at night, and then April 28th from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. All right, well, thank you for attending our virtual Fusion Day workshop. If you would like to just get a fresh set of eyes to look at your PDF before you submit it for printing, I am more than happy to do that. I've included the handshake that you can schedule an appointment with me and come in person and we can discuss that, or feel free to email me a copy of that PDF and I can provide you with some feedback. I will say that if it has anything to do with the content or specific to your research, I would work with a faculty advisor that you have been working with. But if it's anything dealing with layout or how something looks, if the images look right, I'm more than willing to help you out and kind of critique that process. And I do have my contact information right there, so feel free to send me an email or give me a call.